This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni gets sixth term in office following presidential election held on Thursday. India begins the world's biggest coronavirus vaccination campaign targeting 300 million people. And fans banned from attending Egypt's 2021 World Men's Handball Championship matches as COVID-19 fears grow. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, wherever you're joining us. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. We begin the hour in Uganda, where the country's Electoral Commission has declared President Yoweri Museveni the winner of Thursday's presidential poll. His main opposition challenger, Bobi Wine, is, however, disputing the results. The results were announced as soldiers surrounded Wine's residence. CGTN's Astatal reports.
At 76 years old, Yoweri Museveni has won his sixth term in office. This comes after a tense campaign period, which saw several deadly protests taking place. Following the campaign period, an estimated 52% of eligible voters turned up to cast their ballots on January 14th. 2 days later, the Electoral Commission has declared the outcome of those polls.
Invalid votes, 381,386, amounting to 3.68% of the total number of votes cast. The total number of votes cast, 10,359,479, amounting to 57.22% of the total number of registered voters. Now, therefore, candidate Yoweri Museveni Kaguta, having obtained the highest number of votes in the election and the votes cast in his favor being more than 50% of the valid votes cast at the election, the Electoral Commission declares Yoweri Museveni Kaguta elected President of the Republic of Uganda at the presidential election held on the 14th day of January 2021.
According to the Electoral Commission, Museveni's closest challenger, Robert Changulani, commonly referred to by his stage name Bobi Wine, garnered nearly 35% of the vote. Wine has disputed the results, claiming there was electoral fraud. The country's Electoral Commission has denied these claims and challenged the opposition candidate to table evidence to back his claim. Wine countered that he will release the video evidence once the internet connectivity was restored in the country. The government imposed an internet shutdown before the January 14th general election, and that connectivity is yet to be restored. Astatal, CGTN.
American troops are pulling out of Somalia as the deadline for their complete withdrawal approaches. Their departure comes at a critical time for the Horn of Africa nation as it plans to go to the polls amid increased threats from insurgent groups. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo has more from Mogadishu.
Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble is rallying his country's forces ahead of the withdrawal of American troops from Somalia. For years, the U.S. government has been mentoring this elite unit of the armed force known as DANAP at this military base south of the capital, Mogadishu.
On our part as the government, we are ready to stand by your side, ready to provide our unconditional support. Both the President and the administration are ready to work with all of you. We look forward to joining you in the battlefront.
At least 700 armed personnel are stationed in the East African nation, assisting the Somali Army and African Union forces in battling militant groups Al-Shabaab and ISIL. Almost all U.S. personnel stationed in Somalia are due to leave the country by 15th January. This is after the American President Donald Trump ordered their withdrawal. Abdsalam Guled is a security and counterterrorism expert. He says the departure of American troops will impact years of security cooperation between Mogadishu and Washington.
Now is the election time. It's a terrible time whether all Somali's energy and effort is and mind and money focused and concentrate on elections. In 2 months' time, hopefully, we will have a new government, either this government coming back or another government installed. And I hope the Americans will do the same. Then Joe Biden will probably move into the office in January and reverse the policy towards Somalia, reverse the American withdrawal from Somalia, and probably we will see more American boots on the ground in Somalia.
The country is preparing to conduct elections for new lawmakers, senators and president. The polls will be conducted in at least 2 districts in each of the country's 5 regional states. Militant group Al-Shabaab has threatened to disrupt the electoral process. In the past, it has targeted electoral delegates, clan elders and some of the parliamentary candidates. Meanwhile, the federal government has deployed paramilitary troops to some of the hotspot areas, including Hiran and the Gedo region.
The executive order from the president, no one can challenge it. But of course, no one will agree with them, what they have started, what people have appreciated, what the taxpayers spend the money on it, and has been just withdrawn for no reason, and no any political reason, no security reason. Threat of Al-Shabaab is on the rise in the region, in Somalia. And I think the Somali government is not anywhere close to, to take over their own security. And if Americans withdraw now, you see what happens now in Galkayo, you see what happened in Mogadishu last few months.
The US Africa Command says it's repositioning its troops to nearby bases in Kenya and Djibouti and will continue the fight against Al-Qaeda and ISIL. In the first half of January, a wave of new airstrikes in Somalia have killed more than a dozen militants and destroyed some of their strategic compounds. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The party of German Chancellor Angela Merkel has selected a new leader. Armin Laschet will be the next head of the Christian Democratic Union after a tight race. For the first time ever, party members voted virtually for the 59-year-old German state premier, who's poised to take on the chancellorship if the party holds on to power in the September elections. Ryan Thompson reports from Frankfurt.
Auf Armin Laschet. Entfallen.
It came down to the wire, with just 60 votes separating 2 men contending for Germany's most powerful political post. But in the end, State Premier Armin Laschet won a majority of support and will now lead the Christian Democratic Union in the first chapter of the post-Merkel era.
I will give my all to walk together through this year to win the regional election coming up in a few short weeks, and then make sure that we will win the next general elections and keep the position of Chancellor as a member of our party.
The close Merkel loyalist reportedly had the Chancellor's backing, as well as publicly so from a majority of her cabinet members. Many say they preferred the more centrist positions on the economy, healthcare, and immigration. The 59-year-old has had a long career in German politics, but has struggled with name recognition and popularity at home.
Armin Laschet has a lot of executive experience. He's minister-president of Germany's most populous state, but his popularity has been wobbly due to his handling of the coronavirus pandemic.
All eyes are now on September, when Germans will go to the polls and potentially change the balance of power in the Bundestag. It will be the first time in more than 2 decades that the Chancellor Angela Merkel is absent from the process.
Though historically the CSU joins the CDU in a common pick for Chancellor, some believe that Armin Laschet is not a shoo-in just because he's the new party leader. Bavarian State Premier and CSU heavyweight Markus Söder looks to have a lot of potential and could upset the alliance down the line.
Markus Söder has the profile, the reputation, and the star power to do it. But in the meantime, he sent Laschet his best wishes, promising to continue the union's success story. Ryan Thompson, CGTN, Frankfurt.
Major European powers are urging Iran to fully return to the 2015 nuclear deal. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom worry Iran is stepping up its nuclear program and pursuing military uses for uranium. The United Nations nuclear watchdog warned Iran may start producing uranium metal for reactor fuel. That would breach the nuclear accord reached in 2015 with 6 major powers, but it's still unclear if Tehran is actually producing the material. Iran has been stepping away from the deal after the United States pulled out in 2018. India has started the world's largest vaccination campaign against the coronavirus. 2 locally made vaccines have been given emergency use approval, and nearly 300 million people will be inoculated in the first phase. Ravinder Bawa has more.
With the click of a button, Prime Minister of India launched one of the largest vaccination drive in the world. In a virtual address, he paid tribute to scientists and health workers who have been on the front lines of the pandemic.
In the first phase of the program, India is going to vaccinate 30 million people. We will bring the number of vaccinations to 300 million in the second phase. Now, old people and those with chronic diseases will be vaccinated.
Dr. M. Siddharth, who works as a dean in a dental science college, became the first person to be inoculated at this center. As he wants to encourage his team to volunteer for the vaccine, he decided to have the first go. Despite initial apprehensions, he feels vaccine is a necessity against the virus.
I think at this point of juncture, where the COVID-19 pandemic is raging all over the world, and it has not reduced, one must weigh the benefit more than the risk. And I think the benefit of the vaccine is much more than the risk.
About 100 people voluntarily received the vaccine in each of the 3,006 centers in the country. Doctors say these vaccines are safe and the only prevention available in addition to masks and social distancing.
COVID-19 is one of the most dreaded diseases. You know what the mortality is like. And you also know that it is coming up in new forms, in new places. There are new emergent strains. So vaccine is a must. You cannot do away with the vaccine.
You know, corona is a very contagious disease. And by taking the vaccinations, we can further stop the spread of the corona in the second or third phases of the spread.
It is still not clear if the vaccines will be free of cost for the general population. But since they are made in India, they will be cheaper as compared to other countries. Ravinder Bawa, CGTN.
Now, a top official from the World Health Organization hopes its team of experts in Wuhan will get answers to the coronavirus. Michael Ryan told a conference that tracing the virus can be time-consuming, but called it critical to better protect public health and respond to future pandemics. He says he believes the mission will be a success with support from the Chinese. A 13-member team is currently in quarantine at a hotel in Wuhan as they investigate the origins of the coronavirus. CGTN reporter Zhou Jiaxin has more.
And China requires a 14-day quarantine period as part of epidemic prevention and control measures. It hasn't indicated if the team will follow that protocol, but one member from the team said 14 days is likely, which means they're expected to check out on January 29th. The team will be tested again before leaving quarantine. Absolutely no snag, as one WHO team earlier tweeted that the prevention here measures is very different from how they handle things in Europe. And the Chinese Foreign Ministry said Chinese scientists and medical experts will have exchanges with the WHO team via video link during the quarantine period. And Peter Daszak, a zoologist from the WHO team, said on Twitter Friday that they already had one teleconference with their Chinese peers, noting the team is being treated very well. A minute ago, actually, we found staff bringing one member's Gita that we saw at the airport inside after necessary disinfection. Another team member, Dr. Huang Nguyen Vie from Vietnam, tweeted that he is glad to be back in Wuhan after 2 years and seeing the strong spirit among the WHO and China team on the tracing of the coronavirus origins. When asked how long the team would stay here in China, a spokesman with the foreign ministry said China grants them visas long enough to meet mission needs here in China. And the WHO said the joint mission is aimed at reconstructing how exactly the pandemic unfolded and how to better prepare for emerging diseases in the future.
Coming up here on Africa Live. Senegal culls thousands of birds as it traces the origin of a bird flu outbreak. And Nigerian government to sell some public assets to meet this year's budget deficit.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Thank you for staying with us on Africa Live. Now, the UN says attacks by armed groups in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo claimed nearly 650 lives between May and December last year. Most of the attacks were carried out by fighters of the Cooperative for the Development of Congo rebel group. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more now from Kinshasa.
A report by the UN Joint Human Rights Office says 647 civilians were killed by rebels in the DRC's northeastern province of Ituri last year. Over 200 women and children were among the victims. Most of the attacks were blamed on rebels of the Cooperative for the Development of Congo militia. The group is composed of fighters from a community of farmers known as the Lendu. They've had a long history of disputes over land and political representation with the Hema ethnic group. The conflict has displaced more than 1.6 million people. International aid agencies have called on the Congolese government to put more effort in ending the violence in the gold-rich region. The UN says the illegal exploitation of mineral resources is one of the root causes of conflict in eastern DRC. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Now, a strain of the bird flu has been detected in Senegal. The government has gone about culling thousands of birds and is investigating the origins of the outbreak. Astatal with more.
The outbreak of the H5N1 bird flu was first reported on a poultry farm. Senegal's veterinary services report over half the birds were killed out of a flock of 100,000. This comes as the country is dealing with the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
A health response is needed at this time to prevent the disease from spreading. I think that economically, the disease could put the poultry sector at risk, especially as the sector is already hard hit by the COVID-19 crisis.
The outbreak was first discovered in Chess, a region east of the capital Dakar. Officials are still investigating its origins. Those working at poultry farms in the meantime are trying their best to mitigate the damage.
We disinfect all persons and vehicles that need to enter our premises. For the time being, we have suspended all foreign visits until further notice. We have also closed all ventilation ducts on our site to prevent any air that might be contaminated from entering.
Infections in humans usually occurs when one has come in close contact with the infected birds or environments contaminated with H5N1. Human-to-human transmission is still rare, though the disease, according to the WHO, has a mortality rate of around 60%. Astatal, CGTN.
On to Nigeria now, where the government says it'll sell some of its public assets to fund its 2021 budget. It's part of plans to reduce its domestic and foreign borrowing this year. Phil Ihaza reports now from Abuja.
Nigeria's Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed confirmed the decision to sell some government-owned assets in a document she presented to lawmakers. She says this is a move to boost Nigeria's economy and provide the government with more funds to finance the 2021 budget. Nigeria's budget, which was signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari in December last year, is $35 billion, but there is a deficit of $13.5 billion. Many have condemned the federal government's consistent resolve to borrow to fund the budget, which has left the country owing about $90 billion. As a way of reducing the debt burden, the government says it will sell some non-oil assets to serve as an additional source of finance. The minister did not state the assets that are being put up for sale, neither did she state the expected revenue from the sales, but there's been speculation that the government plans to sell some power plants and real estate. Idle assets in Nigeria's real estate and agriculture alone have been estimated to be worth $900 billion, according to accounting firm PricewaterhouseCoopers. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Time for the sports now. South Africa's cricket team has landed in Karachi on Saturday ahead of their first tour of Pakistan in 14 years. South Africa have not toured the country since 2007 following a militant attack on this